Hey, this is Robin Staps, and you're listening to Sonic Perspectives.
Hey guys, thank you for joining us. I am Brian Masso, contributor at Sonic Perspectives, and today I'll have the pleasure of interviewing Robin Staps, guitarist and the mastermind behind the metal band The Ocean, which is set to release their new album on September 25, called Phanerozoic II, Mesozoic. It's great to have you here, Robin. Thank you very much.
Of course, thanks for your time.
The Ocean is well known for producing groundbreaking albums where every record is part of a big puzzle. Where does the now complete Phanerozoic journey fit on such a puzzle?
Well, it fits right in between the surrounding parts, which in this case is our Precambrian record, which was the era or the time on Earth before the Phanerozoic, and our heliocentric record, which kind of continues where the Phanerozoic left off. Those two records were already released, Precambrian in 2007 and heliocentric and anthropocentric both in 2010. And Phanerozoic is the missing link somehow between these two records. And both conceptually and musically, we felt that there was a gap or like a void that we wanted to fill with this record, and that's how the pieces fit.
Perfect. Yeah, it makes completely sense. Since Phanerozoic I, Paleozoic, The Ocean started to write music in a more collaborative way. For this album, how much does the rest of the band contribute to it?
I think I would say it's the most collaborative effort so far. Paul, our drummer, wrote 2 tracks on the record, and every other band member also wrote their own parts, basically. So that was not always like that. Most of the previous records I wrote by myself. I programmed drums. I did pre-productions where I wrote all the instruments and recorded everything, and then just found people to play my music. And now, over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, this band has become more of a band, really, where everyone is contributing creatively to the band. And the whole making of that record was quite different from, for example, Pelagial, the previous record, which I wrote all by myself in isolation, basically. And this record, I still wrote most of the songs myself, but we actually rehearsed them all together. Matthias wrote all of his bass lines. And Paul, the drummer, he also came up with his own parts. A lot of times he still followed what I had written, but a lot of times he also strayed from that and contributed new parts to it. And the same with the vocals. It's also a collaborative effort between Loic and me. And so everyone's a lot more involved than before, I think, with this record. And I think that's also why it sounds a lot more diverse. Paul's tracks, for example, are completely different songwriting-wise to my own. They're quite simple in terms of song structure and really based around beats. I think you can tell that they were written by a drummer in a way, which is really cool. But they're very different from how I write songs, but still they all fit together under the umbrella of this band and The Ocean, and all contribute to the great whole that is this record.
Yeah, speaking of everyone input, I could tell that musically, the direction taken for the second and last installment of the Phanerozoic series is way bolder, more experimental, more progressive. What is the reason behind this?
Well, it wasn't really an intentional choice. It was more a case of, the material was just there already somehow. The material of the first part and also the material of the second part. And I kind of knew which songs I would end up on the first part. I wanted that record to be very consistent and to have this kind of continuous vibe from the beginning to the end of the record. The second half was a lot less clear to me. Like all these tracks, I knew that they wouldn't fit on part 1, and so they would go on part 2. But I didn't really see that record become an album until quite late in the process. And that led to a very different approach to it. With Phanerozoic I, everything was kind of clear. The song order, the song choice, and the transitions between tracks, all of that was kind of already clear from the beginning. With Phanerozoic II, there was a lot more room for experimenting, and I didn't have that completely clear vision. That is something that happened a lot later. And so the whole process of making that record was more experimental. And I also at one point just decided to let things happen and try that for once, to let things fall into place and not become too attached to my own pre-productions, my own ideas of how I wanted certain things to sound, but to just wait until relatively late before the mixing process to decide certain things like song order and things like that. And I think that really helped, and it really worked out great. It was more of an experience of free fall than something where everything is perfectly planned and rehearsed from the beginning. And in that, it's just a different approach. It's not necessarily better or worse. It's just a different way of making a record. And this led to the record as it is.
Well, I consider this record to be outstanding. So given the collaborative effort and this new way of making music, are there any plans to repeat this process for next records, or it should go back to the way it was before?
I think it's a direction we have taken here. So it's quite likely that we will continue with this. I want everyone to be involved in the band at this stage. I no longer want to be the conductor of this band as an orchestra conductor, telling people what to do. I want my bandmates to feel what they do and to contribute something that they can relate to. That's very important. And I think it ends up making the better records. So I think we will very likely continue with this collaborative approach. However, that being said, the way we write songs, and I'm not just talking about myself, but also Paul, for example, is that usually happens initially in isolation. Like, we're not a band that jams in the room and everybody brings a riff and then we play it all together. No, it's like there's one person sitting down writing music and then playing it to the other people, and then building on that and working with that material that one person has written and improving it and taking it into different directions. So the writing process, I think, will always be something quite something that happens in one mind initially, but then what the band does with it is where the collaborative effort comes in. And I think this is the approach we're going to take with the future records as well.
My next question is about the constantly alluded philosophical and existential issues that the Ocean has put out on their discography. On this occasion, the central concept film is time a niche philosophical idea of eternal recurrence. From your perspective, how does this thematic theme relate to nowadays events such as global warming, current coronavirus pandemic, and constant friction between countries and the people inside those countries?
Well, the idea of eternal recurrence is the idea that things happen over and over again in infinite time and space. It's a concept of time that is cyclical rather than linear. And this is the red thread that is going through both Phanerozoic records, the first half as well as the second half in different forms. The basic idea is as old as humanity itself, basically, but I think Nietzsche was the most popular modern revisitor of this old idea. And so there's lots of Nietzsche woven into the lyrics of these two albums. And then there is the geological scheme, of course, the geological eras. And if you look at the Phanerozoic and what happened, you see lots of, I don't want to say proof, but like lots of examples for this idea of eternal recurrence. Continents have drifted apart and collided and drifted apart again. We've seen various almost complete breakdowns and extinction events of life on Earth. There were at least 5 during the Phanerozoic when more than 80% of all life on Earth disappeared, but researched again later in different forms in different places. And there's, like I said, there's lots of examples for eternal recurrence of certain events. And so this is what this album is dealing with. It's essentially different concepts of time. Is time something to be imagined as like a linear progression with relations of cause and effect, or is it something that is cyclical, that repeats, that revolves in circles? And these are the central themes that both of these records are making reference to, woven into this prehistoric context of certain things happening during certain times and certain eras, mass extinction events, such as the Jurassic Cretaceous extinction event that we all know as the end of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, for example, or the Permian, the extinction event at the end of the Permian titled The Great Dying, which was the last track on the Phanerozoic I album, when 95% of all life disappeared from Earth for very comparable reasons to what is currently happening with regards to climate change. There was also a case of a global warming of about 5 degrees, which led to an extinction event that annihilated 95% of all life on Earth, but of course caused by entirely different reasons. There was no humans back on Earth, back in the Permian, which have caused that. But still, the outcome is probably quite comparable to what we will face in the next couple of hundred years.
Jurassic Cretaceous is a mind-blowing song, and for me, it is one of the best tracks ever composed by the ocean. It is so intense, not only musically, but also conceptually. I think it addresses the fragility of human nature, even though we are the only creatures on Earth. You just said that dinosaurs used to be the apex creatures, and now they are gone. Do you think that, unlike previous dominant species, maybe humanity has a better chance to avoid complete extinction?
In theory, yes, right? I mean, we're supposed to be the most intelligent species of all. And if you believe intelligence to be the capacity to learn from our mistakes, then it should be so. But I have doubts because there are certain particular interests preventing us from making use of that intelligence in a way that allows us to guarantee our survival. So I don't know, man. I can't tell the future. I'm no fortune teller. As a matter of fact, humans are the apex predators these days. But will we be able to use the strongest and most efficient tool we have, which is our rationality, to avoid extinction? I won't be able to answer that question.
Yeah, it's completely impossible to anticipate such events, but given the eternal recurrence, the record picks up. Maybe humanity is the only species that has a better chance to break this eternal recurrence, you know?
Fingers crossed, yes. Cheers to that. Let's drink to that.
Speaking of such song, there is a stretch connection between it and Lars von Trier's movie Melancholia. How does such movie inspire you, and how does its content fit the Phanerozoic theme?
Well, what happened at the end of the Cretaceous is that a giant asteroid collided with Earth and wiped out 95% of all life on Earth in its wake. If you take this scenario, what happened back then, an asteroid of about 10 kilometers diameter colliding with Earth and causing a supersonic shock wave, and then giant forest fires all over the globe, the ashes and the smoke from the fires eventually eclipsing the light of sun, plunging Earth into a deep freeze. All these things are very dramatic to visualize, and when you really think about it. And what we do with this track is we imagine that taken to the human level. How would that look like if that happened these days? And when you do that, you arrive at Lars von Trier's movie Melancholia. It's exactly that, this impending collision on a planetary scale, and how we deal as individuals with the certainty that this is happening, that the end is nigh. So that's what the lyrics of the Phanerozoic records do. They don't just talk about these geological eras or these prehistoric eras. They are essentially written from the human perspective because they're sung by a human being, and that requires a certain sense of abstraction. And this is exactly what we're doing here. We're taking this Jurassic Cretaceous extinction event caused by an asteroid collision and imagining, how would that look like in our days and age, basically.
As I remember from that movie, at the end when oblivion was imminent, I remember there were 3 different ways to face it. One of the characters believed that being inside the magic cave, it will be completely safe and nothing will happen. Another character was completely nuts and despair about it. And the last one was stoically facing his destiny. So listening to the content of this new album, I think that the choice that this album will take will be the last one, to just accept our fate and with any probably with any regrets, just stoically face it.
Exactly, and that relates it back to Nietzsche and his concept of amor fati, which is the love for fate, translated, or like embracing fate and embracing things that we cannot change. But this is, of course, taking it to a very personal level. Like the movie, as you said, depicts different characters dealing with the situation in very different ways, and if we apply this to our own lives, this will always be the case, and we don't want to give any instructions here or any answers. Everybody has to find relevance in music and art and lyrics, find relevance to their own lives, and how you interpret things at that level of detail is really up to everyone. And I don't want to take too much away by saying this is how we meant it, or by explaining things in a very detailed way. We want to give certain ideas and a certain impetus to think through things in a certain direction. But in the end, everyone has to walk the route on their own, and come up with their own conclusions and interpretations.
Sure. Back to the record, The Ocean once again had Jonas Renks from Catatonia as a special guest. What do you think about his contribution, and will there be more future collaborations?
The future, I can't tell you. Like I said, I'm no fortune teller, but I very much enjoyed collaborating with Jonas on these two records, and there's no reason why we shouldn't do that again. I think it worked out really well, and he is that type of person and musician that really understands where we come from intuitively without any need for explanations. And I already realized that while working with him on the first part of the record, where I basically just sent him the track without any hints or ideas of what we imagine over it, and what he sent back to us as demos was initially spot on, like exactly what we had in mind. And so we just seem to click and to function very well together creatively, and there's no reason why we shouldn't do that again. But there's nothing planned. Like I very much try to live in the present tense and focus on what's imminently ahead of me, rather than to think 10 years ahead already. Right now we have this record to be released on September 25th. Then hopefully at one point we're eventually going to start touring again and bringing this record out to people. And I haven't started thinking about a new record yet. That is still quite a long ways away, I think, at this stage.
Yeah, I completely understand, and hopefully you will be back on track performing this great music. Oligocene divides the record in two parts, the Mesozoic and Cenozoic era. How would you describe each period, and how they are different from each other, musically and conceptually?
Well, the Mesozoic half of the record, the first half of the record, is musically quite loaded with information. It's very full. There's a lot happening. Jurassic Cretaceous is probably the craziest track I ever wrote, I think. And I also spent more time on that song than on any other song. It was one of those tracks that was never finished, but that I always had the desire to go back to and keep working on it, and eventually it got done, and I'm very happy about that. But yeah, the first half is very full. There's a lot happening. And then the second half, the Cenozoic half, the music is a lot more thinned out. It's the instrumentation is more like minimalist, and the songwriting is more kind of like spaced out, and there's a lot more room to breathe. And at the same time, it feels colder than the beginning of the record, I think. And that was partially intentional. We wanted the record to become a journey, that starts in one place and concludes in a totally different place. And when you listen to the beginning of the record, you won't necessarily be able to guess the direction where it's going. And I think this worked out really well. And in order to achieve that, we needed a track like Oligocene as a transition from this very, I don't want to say overloaded, but very full first half of the record into the more spacious second half of the record. And that's exactly what that track is doing. It's taking you along on the journey and inaugurating that second half of the record that is quite different, without too much of a step, without too much of realizing that now something else is happening. No, it happens gradually, and that's what that track is exactly doing. It connects very well with the first half and with the second half, with both halves, and transitions from the beginning into the end, so to speak. And in that, it's comparable to I don't know why. Like I was thinking about that the other day, but it's comparable to Pelagial as well. Like on Pelagial, we also had tracks like Signals of Anxiety or Boundless Vasts that served the exact same purpose. You know, the beginning of that record was also quite eclectic and like really full with lots of things happening, different tempos, different moods. And then the second half of the record was the longer and kind of darker and slower tracks like Boundless Vasts or Signals of Anxiety also helped, you know, to move over from the first to the second half of the record. So I think it's somehow related to how I write music and or how I make records that, you know, you eventually always come to the point where you ask yourself, where do pieces fit in the great scheme of the record? And then you see them fit, but you still need certain transitions and you still need certain things to happen in order to make the journey smooth and gradual and not feel forced. And that's what tracks like Oligocene fulfill, if you want to think of like a purpose in the grade of the record.
Yeah, I think every conceptual album needs these kind of tracks in order to continue the story and to be cohesive.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
We just spoke about going back to touring. I know that The Ocean is a tireless band that simply loves to play live. You guys are continually embarking on marathon tours. Besides the obvious financial hits provoked by the coronavirus to the music industry, how are you handling not being able to perform live?
Well, we're coping well, I think, to be honest. We have had a very, very busy year 2019. We played 130 shows. So it feels good to be home for a while. It feels good to have a year that is less busy, to wind down a little bit and focus on other things. Which is not to say that the crisis hasn't hit us in a dramatic way. We had a lot of things canceled. We were supposed to tour South America in May. I was working on that tour for a long time, and I was very upset when it became clear that it couldn't happen. And we had great festivals confirmed for this year, Wacken in Germany, for example, and like Metal Over Russia, and like lots of cool things that didn't happen. So of course we were pissed when it happened. But at the same time, we realized that there's absolutely nothing we can do. Everybody's in the same situation, and there's no point in crying about it. You know, the only thing you can do is shift your focus on different things. And that's exactly what we did. We started working on projects that otherwise we would have never had the time to do, like this Phanerozoic photo book, for example, that we're releasing now with the limited editions of the new record. It's a 130 pages book documenting our 2019 tours through countries like India, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Russia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Georgia, a lot of places we had never been to before. And we had this awesome photo material from these tours that I've been wanting to put into a book. But at the beginning of the year, I decided that it's not going to happen. I don't have time for that. And then when Corona happened, I was like, all right, now let's do it. You know, and now we have this book and it turned out great. It's a beautiful document for us, but also for I think it gives a really interesting insight into the life of a touring band in these places that not everybody gets to so easily. And yeah, similar with my label Pelagic Records, we've also taken on a lot of projects because of this crisis that otherwise we wouldn't have had the time to do simply. And so in a way, it feels good being home for a while and, you know, having the time to do all the things you've always wanted to do but never had a chance to. So I'm trying to see things positively. But obviously, everyone is affected in different ways. And especially for our crew, it's particularly brutal. Most of the musicians I know, they all do other things besides music or besides playing in bands. So, you know, for them, it was easier to shift their focus on other things. But like for professional sound guys and lighting designers, they have nothing this year. And it's been really, really brutal for them. And so, yeah, I think everyone is dealing with that in a different way. I also have to say that Matthias, our bass player, and Loic, our singer, they both had serious health issues this year that would have knocked them out for months anyways, even if it wasn't for Corona. So somehow for us as a band, it all somehow just happened at the right time, you know. Otherwise, we would have needed to cancel a lot of things from our end, I think. They're both fine now. They're well, but they wouldn't have been able to perform live for several months anyways. They both went through surgery. And so it's just a fucking doomed year, you know, and like we're trying to get the best out of it and looking forward to next year, which will hopefully be better.
I'm glad they are okay now. You just spoke about one of the perks of the limited edition, but I gotta talk about the deluxe edition, which is mind-blowing. It was really sold out in few hours, and obviously the most precious item from the deluxe edition, besides the records, are the fossils, which are authentic, and they even come with their own certificate. How did you manage to get them? I mean, that must be really hard work.
That was quite a challenge indeed. The initial idea, credit goes to my dad. I told him about the next album concept, Phanerozoic, back then already, and he was like, "Oh, that's cool, and an album about prehistoric eras. You should include some fossils." And I was laughing at first, but then I was like, "That would actually be cool." And so I started digging around the internets to find fossils, but those things are found in the wild, and there's not really like a big commercial market for it. And we were looking at 1,000 box sets already, so we needed a fairly large quantity of fossils. And we managed to make that work with the help of a very nice lady from a geological institute near Munich. She was really into the project, and she helped us source these from trade fairs and some fossil retailers over the course of several weeks. In the end, we managed to make that work only because we had different choices of fossils that and we basically gave people a choice. So we would get like 150 trilobites. So we would sell 150 box sets with trilobites. And then we had 80 Mosasaurus teeth, which was a swimming dinosaur. And then we would sell 80 box sets with one of these dinosaur teeth, basically. And then once they were gone, then we found something else. So this is how we made it work in the end. The most tricky part was the super limited edition that was 250 copies. And the idea there was to include one fossil from each era of the Phanerozoic. So one fossil from the Paleozoic, which was a trilobite, one fossil from the Mesozoic, which was a Cleoniceras, an ammonite, and one fossil from the Cenozoic era, which was a petrified fish skeleton. And we needed 250 of each of these, and that was the greatest challenge, but somehow we made it work. And it was probably the craziest music packaging project and the nerdiest also that I've ever gotten engaged in. But it was super fun. And I learned a lot of stuff, and I'm glad we made it work.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Right now, the package with the 3 fossils is sold out, but there are still pieces from the one that only includes one fossil. So everybody listening, be quick to grab them before they are gone.
That's right. It was quite challenging, but great fun.
Okay, Robin, I got one more question for you. If there are any plans for a live stream show or any other way to promote the new album this year?
There are, but they're still in their infancy. We are looking at options right now. We're probably going to start rehearsing in October, rehearsing the Phanerozoic II album, because we have actually a European tour booked starting January 7th. But at this stage, nobody here knows if that can go ahead. It's highly questionable, I think. If it doesn't happen, we have a backup routing already in place for later in the year. So, tickets bought will, of course, continue to be valid. But we must be prepared for not being able to do that tour in January. And then if that is the case, I think we will look at doing a live stream sometime in November, where the idea would be to play Phanerozoic II in its entirety, maybe even Phanerozoic I and Phanerozoic II, but I'm not quite decided if I really want to put that on my shoulders. It's a lot of material to rehearse, and then also to film and edit properly. All of that takes time and costs a lot of money. But I think we want to do something like that. We're definitely not going to be reinventing the wheel with that. So many live streams right now. I've already watched so many, but it's the only thing we have right now to promote music and to promote a new album with a virtual show. And I think we will start looking into that fairly soon. Right now, we're still busy with album press and promotions and packing 2,500 pre-orders starting next week, when we will finally get the final missing element that we still need. So this is going to keep us busy here at Pelagic for the next 4 weeks easily. And after that, we're going to start looking into the stream.
Okay, perfect. Well, I really hope, for my own interest, that live stream show takes place and that it includes both of the Phanerozoic installments.
All right, fingers crossed. Yeah, I can't promise it, but of course, it would make a lot of sense and would be a really nice
Yeah,
project.
hopefully. All right, Robin, that will be all. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time, and we wish you a very successful album release. Congratulations to you and the band on such brilliant album. For me, it is a serious contender for Album of the Year. Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us at Sonic Perspectives for this interview with Robin Staps from the Ocean. Remember to follow Sonic Perspectives for more interviews, news, reviews, and other daily content on Facebook, Flipboard, Twitter, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified about them. I am Brian Masso, and I will leave you with Jurassic Cretaceous, the first single taken from Phanerozoic II, Mesozoic, Cenozoic, the new album by the Ocean.
But